So I'm going to, show quite a bit of detailed user interfaces as well. So if you are in the back, it might be a bit difficult to see. There are some seats available in the front, so if you want to make your way over here, you could do it now or during the presentation. That's not a problem. So what I'm going to do is to take you on a tour across our whole platform. I'm going to cover both existing features for those of you who are not that familiar with CSense, and for those who are existing users, I'll dive into some new upcoming roadmap features as well. So there should be a lot for you to learn about what's coming. And I'll start in the left end, talking about user tracking and data capture, user profiling, audience segmentation, and then also some examples of how we use these segments outbound to drive engagement and to generate ad revenue. So let's start first with how we capture information from websites. So it's done by placing the CSense script in the master layout of your web content management system. Then when a user comes into the site, that script is going to run on every page and collect information about the user. If we haven't seen this user before, we are going to allocate a unique anonymous identifier. And from then on, we'll capture all of the events on this identifier. There are a number of things that we capture automatically. So we obviously store which page you are looking at. We use the IP address to do lookups towards location databases to find things like the city you're in, the region, country, and so on. We grab as much information as we can about the environment, so the browser, operating system, devices, and so on, referrer URLs where you're coming in from. So this is just a short list of the things that we capture automatically. Then you have the ability to add your own custom parameters. So if the user is on a particular landing page or dealing with shopping carts and so on, you can add your own data to the tracking. We've done this, this is a page view event, and this is the way we've done all of the tracking for websites in the past. And as I talked about yesterday, there are new mechanisms that we call performance events that are better suited for tracking sub-page events. So I'm going to get back to those later on. We are good at tracking data from any type of device. So we are using the common technologies like first-party cookies, third-party cookies, but we're also using other markers in the browser, like local storage, caching mechanisms, so that if the user deletes the cookie, we can easily restore that ID from other technologies. And our approach so far is kind of we're monitoring a lot of technologies, and we use kind of the number of technologies we need to be able to be sure that we're tracking on any type of device. We're also tracking across multiple sites, even if third-party cookies are not supported. And you have the ability to track across multiple devices, given that you explicitly map the user to our CSense identifiers. I'm going to get back to that as well. For mobile applications, we have made available an Android SDK and an iOS SDK. All of the tracking is done using HTTP requests. You can basically do that from any type of device without having an SDK. So this is more of a convenience feature, which makes it easier to pick the right user identifier, maybe do things like caching events while you're offline and then send them afterwards. Then to have the concept of being able to map your own identifier to the CSense identifier. So if a user comes into a site And we might have tracked a lot of information on that user before using the CSense identifier. Then they log into the site, and suddenly you as a customer know exactly who this user is. Then you can make this mapping, this link from your own ID, might be a CRM ID, payable ID, to the CSense ID. And if you do then this mapping across multiple different devices, this will make it so that all of the events go into one single user profile. You can do it in the browser with a JavaScript call, or you can do it server-side on the web server if you want to do that. All right, so here's an example of a demo of cross-device tracking. So on the left-hand side is a demo news portal that I've put together based on a number of RSS feeds. On the right-hand side, I'm showing my current user profile. And in this case, I'm focusing on the kind of the raw event stream. And if I go ahead and read articles on the site, you're going to see on the right-hand side that all of the things that I do, we'll see page views, recommendation impressions, recommendations clicked. These appear in my event stream in real time. Then I'm switching over to a commerce site, and then you can see how I look at different types of products. And finally, I collected all of the devices I had at home, where I've logged into the site once from each of these devices, which means that when I go to the same demo site on these devices, you're going to see the articles I read coming up in the event stream, regardless of which device I'm using. It's not, this is not a product user interface. You're not supposed to kind of sit and watch individual users on the site, but it's more like a technical demo showing that what you're doing on one page is something that you can take action on that next page. That's the level of real-timeness that we support in the product. The other thing that we do is that we will download all of the web pages from the site that we're tracking. And we use that information to produce what we call content profiles. So here we are building a content profile for the page, both looking at common meta tags. There might be an author tag, category, and so on. We'll also look at the free text content of the article to see if we find things like a person, location, maybe a company, and we also try to find generic concepts that are mentioned in the article. And all these things goes into the content profile to allow you to do audience segments using the data later on. So this is an example of what the content profile might look like. So you have a thumbnail for this article, you have some traffic information, bounce rates, average reading times. You can see the keywords and concepts you extracted for this article. You can see how people come into this article from other pages. You see which search engines and social networks are driving traffic to this article. And you see where people go after they've been to this article. And also some location information, where are people coming from, what devices are they using. This is a user interface that's built up just using our standard APIs. And in this case, it's just getting the data, but filtering by this particular URL of this page. So you can build any type of user interfaces like this very easily on top of our APIs. Then all of the events go into our core engine. We've chosen to build our own event data cubes for this purpose, not relying on a standard database. And the purpose is to be able to optimize for being able to capture a massive amount of events in real time and making it actionable immediately afterwards. And we offer all of the products around this core to run real-time queries, slicing and dicing and filtering across any type of dimension. And then we can use that data for many different purposes across the different products. We take the events and we build these individual user profiles. And at this point in time, we are tracking, I say, 900 million here. I think it's more than 1 billion at the moment. User profiles, and then these are based on more than 12 billion identity markers, where a cookie could be an identity marker, for instance. So some example data of what's contained in the user profile. So one thing we do is calculate long-term interests based on the articles that you consume over time. We're looking at all of the keywords that appear in those articles, how long time you spend on the article, and then we're mapping it up to a news taxonomy. You can have your own types of taxonomies if you have more vertical type content. And so this is one way of calculating interest that could be used for personalization, could be used for advertising. Another area would be intent, where we have different mechanisms for capturing, what are you searching for on the site or on external search engines. You can tag up certain pages with, for instance, product tags. And this is more meant for, what you are interested in the short term, which again would be a scenario for advertising, which I'll show later. You have things like the context, so which devices, operating systems are you using, which locations are you accessing the site from. Here's another example of data that's really coming from these content profiles. So for me, seem to be reading about Taylor Swift. And you see the different people, companies, locations, concepts. And in this case, I've just run a query towards an API. Filtering on the last 2 hours, because I often do this in real-time demos as well. And it's looking at that event stream and picking out all of the relevant information based on the pages that have been on these last 2 hours. First-party data, so you will be able to push in any type of data from your own business systems. So typically a list of key value pairs. Also very interested for targeting purposes. You'll see which segments you belong to. We have some audience estimate capabilities, and then you have the event stream that we looked at as part of that first demo. So again, it's some sample data I've chosen to expose in this demo, but we have a very rich and complete user profile where you can push in your own data to make it as complete as possible, and then use it for audience segmentation and targeting. Then you have the Seasons Insight product, which lets you build many types of real-time dashboards to look at aggregated information about users, about content and traffic data. We have a number of standard dashboards that you can use. Most of the customers would choose to build their own custom dashboards from a number of widgets that you have available, where you can configure what metrics you want to display. You can configure how you want to graph the data. You have some, in this case, some popular documents. You have how many people are reading about particular persons in different articles, traffic distribution, and so on. And then on the left-hand side, you can filter and slice and dice across all of the data that you have tracked. So in this case, if I want to see the dashboard for desktop users who are accessing the site from London, Madrid, or Stockholm, I can just filter that in real time, and the dashboard is getting updated. I could do it by source and destination, saying I want to see the dashboard only for those coming in from Google. I could do it by user interest, so see the dashboard for those who are interested in sports. I could use first-party data to just see the dashboard for female users based on pushing that information from a CRM system. And another way is to see the dashboard for subscribers only based on custom parameters sent in with the page view event. Some customers also want to export the data and look at the data in other tools. And we are investing in our roadmap now to make it easier to export data, for instance, to Excel, exporting data from individual widgets or for whole workspaces. Power Query is something that you have been able to use already. It's an add-on module for 2013, and then it's going to be a standard version of Office 2016. So Power Query is capable of submitting a URL request and then parsing the JSON that comes back. You have the data in a table. You can click a refresh button whenever you want to update it, so you don't have to go through this export-import process manually. And then you can obviously build different kinds of charts or analysis after you have exported the data. There are just so that there are some data that is just too big to get using an HTTP request, and we're also looking at more bulk export APIs. If you want to dump 1 million users or raw traffic for a longer period of time, we want to enable you to dump that to files and download those files to do whatever you want with them in external tools. So we can move over to the data management platform. And the basics of the data management platform is enabling you to take all of the data you have about the different users and then use that to create audience segments. And one example would be a simple segment like this. So first I set the location city equals London. I can do a subgroup saying that I want only users who are accessing the site using a mobile device or a tablet device. And the last criteria I could do from the first-party data, seeing that I only want to have female users. And I can also set the periods of the time frame for the event I'm going to look at when classifying the users into these segments. At any time when you're adding these segment criteria, you will see on the right-hand side how large this segment is compared to your total population. And these are exact data, so it's 466 out of 10,108 users. And all of this is updated in real time. Another example would be a segment based on the interests. So let's say I want to have only those who are interested in technology. And I can also use the information in the content profile stating that I want only those who have read about the company Microsoft. And I'm adding an engagement criteria saying that they have to have more than 20 page views within this time period, 7 days. Recently, we've also added a new advanced mode. So these are, the segments are really defined as a JSON filter. And there has been some desire from the customers and our own onboarding to leverage all of the new API features immediately. And sometimes it takes time to include them into the basic user interfaces, or it could even be difficult to create a user interface for some of the features. And that's why you can now take advantage of the advanced mode to define segments there. We talked about that some of these segments are based on first-party data. And we have a user API, which you can use programmatically to push in data from any business system. And in addition to that, we're looking at a number of different particular vendors where we might create some more deeper integration so you don't have to do that code yourself. So we're looking at areas such as CRM systems. We're looking at audience marketplace data providers, customer survey tools, easier integration with social media platforms, and we're also looking at potentially commerce vendors. And this could surface as either descriptions on how to integrate with these or actual connectivity user interfaces where you set up the connection with these systems and then automatically pull data from them. This new feature called lookalike modeling that we are close to putting in beta. And the purpose of lookalike modeling is you might have a small segment that's very attractive to you. It could be female users based on CRM data. It could be people who've clicked on a BMW ad. It's an attractive segment that you want to use for the purpose of advertising, but it's too small. It's not giving you the number of page views that you want to really sell larger ad campaigns. And the purpose of lookalike modeling is, well, I have this existing segment of users, and I want to expand it to become bigger, so I have more page views so I can sell ads to. And first of all, you would need to have a source segment. So just as an example here, I'm creating a segment of subscribers who are based in London. Currently, the size of this segment is 3.45%. I could go back into this segment and enable lookalike modeling. Clicking on the lookalike modeling button, I can set a percentage size, and this is basically the share of users that are coming into the site that I want to classify into this segment. And then we use machine learning algorithms to find the 10% that are most similar to the original source segment. And I've talked to Gisle, our developer, who's been working on this a few times, and asking him to explain me exactly how this works, because I said the customers are going to ask about it. So we're going to work on some explanations, maybe over time also exposing some parameters in the user interface that shows you, what was important when generating these lookalikes. Because most customers say, we need lookalikes, it's very important for us. And then they say, we're very skeptic to lookalike modeling. We think you're just using some cheap algorithms so they don't work. So that's where we need to provide you with some more facts about how this is done. The way you can see here that I have a new lookalike segment that's automatically generated for me. And if I go into that lookalike segment, you'll also see that this group of lookalike users, they're referred to with a specific segment criteria. So in this case, the group is segment, and the criteria is lookalike, and then you have the source segment. This is actually a quite flexible way of referring to the group of lookalike users. It means that you could potentially reuse this criteria in multiple segments if you're doing additional tests and you're adding additional filter criteria. You could also combine multiple lookalike segments into one segment if that makes sense for your scenario. So we're looking forward to get this in beta, and we're looking forward to work with customers to learn how well this works and then continue to add features to the lookalike modeling. So that was a lot about the DMP, and now we can talk a bit about how you can use the DMP together with multiple different outbound systems to leverage these segments. And the first scenario we can look at is content personalization. And this is done using our CSense content product. And the basics here is that you will define a configuration for a recommendation widget. Then you can place these widgets in different places on your website to deliver recommendations. You have then the opportunity to look at the performance reporting user interfaces to see how well are the recommendations doing at the moment, and going back to tweak all of these configurations and optimize them server-side without having to modify any tags on the site. When you are building the configuration, you have access to a lot of parameters. You have access to all of the individual parameters on the user profile itself. You have information about popularity of the article, so you could use that as part of the configuration. You know the context of the page you are on at the moment based on these content profiles. And you can also branch out the different recommendation configurations based on audience segments from the DMP. So say, for these users belonging to this segment, we run these types of recommendations. For users belonging to a different segment, we run a different set of recommendations. To get started with recommendations, we have some basic recommendation modes. And these would be contextual, so that you could show recommended articles related to the current page that you're on. You have a trending mode, where you can show popular recommendations. And you have a behavioral mode that shows you recommendations based on your past history. And you can use weights to blend these modes together, so it could be mostly contextual, but a little bit trending. So there are lots of flexibility in how you set things up. And then we see, as I said, a lot of users starting to use segments from the DMP as a factor in determining how to use this space that you have reserved for recommendations. So let's say, by looking at the user profile, is this user a subscriber? Well, if it's not a subscriber, let's use this space to promote premium articles. But if this user is a subscriber, we can just show them, popular and relevant content. For those of you who are familiar with CSUN's content, we are going to make investments in usability of the configuration editor. It's fairly technical at the moment. It's very flexible. But there are improvement opportunities, as I call them, for making it easier to use, in particular for business users. We're also investing when it comes to audience and performance reporting. We have good reporting today on impressions and clicks, but we are going to do more integration with the core, so we can join that with all the analytics data, so you can see for people who click on this widget, where are they coming from, what devices are they using, what are they interested in, really joining it together with all of the other data that we have available in the core. Another engagement scenario is email marketing. And we don't have our own email marketing tool as such, but we have integrated with several tools as part of different customer projects. And going forward, we're also looking at doing more pre-made integrations with certain tools. These are some examples. We also have other partners that we are working with. The idea is usually that we export the audience segments over into the email marketing tool. And then the first scenario would be if the audience segment controls which users you send the email to. You could generate a sports newsletter for that segment, a business newsletter for that segment, and international news for the third segment. So you could do that editorially, but there's also an option for connecting the content recommendations engine to help you deliver the actual content that goes into these different newsletters. So do a request to the recommendations engine and say, give me some relevant articles for those who belong to the interested in sports category. And you will get those articles, and I've done some tests where you programmatically insert this into a template. You could also do this for individual users. That would mean that you would need to make a request to the recommendations engine with the user ID. So if you have 10,000 users, you would have to ask the engine for individual recommendations. It might be a sensible scenario, might not, depends on the type of newsletters you send out, but at least you should know that that is also a possibility. Then we can move on to talk about some advertising scenarios. So we have two ad servers at the moment, and the first one here, CSUN's Display, is focused on display advertising. And it's integrated with the DMP in such a way that you can export the audience segments and make them available in Seasons Display for booking targeted display campaigns. So the way this works is a user comes into a website. There is a display ad tag on the page. That tag is going to make a request back to the DMP saying that right now I have this user on the page. The DMP is going to respond, well, this user belongs to these 4 segments. And then the ad tag can forward that information back into the display ad server. It's going to do its prioritization and yielding and then deliver back a relevant ad for this user. So this is how it could look like in the system. So you have in the DMP a number of audience segments. You set up the authentication information to the ad server that you're using. And then in this case, I have a campaign for a company producing a sports gadget. So one campaign targeted towards the female users and one for the male users. So these have different creatives. And I can open the segment targeting over here, and in this case I'm choosing male as the segment that I'm going to send for this male campaign. And in my case then, me belonging to the male segment, I'm going to see the creative over here intended for the male audience. And then I have a colleague, Lauren, sitting over there. She's still angry with me for revealing her age and the birth year. But she's belonging to the female segment. And when she comes into that same page, the ad server is going to deliver the campaign meant for the female segment. Here's another example. So Lauren, in this case, she wants to buy a new car and is searching for Tesla. So reading multiple articles about Tesla. And this is going to trigger that Tesla appears as an intent in Lauren's user profile. And then again, back in the display ad system, I've set up a Tesla Motors campaign. And I can go into the setting up the targeting criteria, choosing the season segment, and choose the specific segment considering Tesla cars. And then she'll see that ad over here. So a couple of examples of targeted advertising using our display ad server together with the Seasons DMP. The other thing that's really important is being able to capture the performance data back from the ad server into the DMP. So what we'll do is for every impression and click, we will record that information. This is a click, it occurs on this segment, it's done by this user, and then we'll capture as much meta information as we can. So this is the campaign, this is the creative, this is the advertiser, and that allows you to do ad performance reporting in the DMP and then look at how to optimize these segments over time to see if you can generate more revenue from them. So very soon now we're going to introduce new dashboards in the DMP specifically for advertising. First supporting our own ad servers, and then with third-party integration, things like Google DFP, we're going to do some of the same things there over time. So this is what we touched upon yesterday regarding the fact that we have these new performance events to be able to track, for instance, conversion on a commerce site. So first of all, you can use our recommendations engine also in a commerce scenario. So doing segment-based recommendations, such as people who likes a particular brand. You can use the display ad server to drive targeted promotions. And then for these performance events, what I was doing was attaching these to the Add to Cart button. I can send in any type of meta information, such as this is the product ID, this is the price, this is the brand, and all these things get recorded. And we're introducing new widgets in the DMP to be able to look at the performance stats of all of these products then. And you can really invent all of your own events, give them a type, send in any type of meta information, and it will allow you to capture the information, use them as filters. And then also they are made available for creating new audience segments. So jumping back into the DMP again, this is how you would create a segment for all of those who put a particular product, in this case Apple iPad mini, in your shopping cart. So I'm choosing the origin of these events, which is my shopping site, and then I can choose that product by name over here. And that gives me an audience segments that I could be using for retargeting or remarketing. Could be on the front page of the shopping site. In my case, I made an example where I booked a display ad and put it on a different site, so the demo news sites, showing this banner ad if you belong to the segment. In most cases, you might, if you are in a shopping scenario, this might be a more, not a banner ad, but more dynamic. So you look at the products that they've looked at, you do a call and get some images for those particular products. Obviously, you won't make 100,000 segments if you have a product catalog with 100,000 products. And then, as I said, we are using these performance events also to track interaction with the ads. So again, going back to the DMP, I've just put up a very simple dashboard where I'm tracking impressions and clicks for the different ad campaigns I'm running. The iPad mini one is over here, but there's also a couple of other campaigns that are running on that same page. So when I now refresh the page, it's generating a new ad impression for this, and then that also appears in real time here in my dashboard. And then I go down and I click on the ad, driving me over to the shopping portal again. That's another type of event, and it's being captured in real time, and it's going to appear over here where I have my iPad mini campaign going from 2 to 3 clicks. And then, as customers have asked about, you can go back into the DMP and you can create audience segments based on how people interact with the ads. So if you want to have the segment of users who clicked on this particular iPad mini campaign, you can do that by first selecting the group performance parameters. You select the criteria campaign, and in this case, I'm using the campaign identifier codes in the display ad server to refer to this campaign. And I'm also choosing the type of events. I'm saying that I only want the users who actually clicked on the campaign, not only those who have seen it. And in most cases, you wouldn't go around and remember all of these codes. So we'll let you also select the campaign by the title of the campaign as well. Let's see here. Then we've done the same type of integration with the DMP with our performance-based ad server. So Seasons Advertising also allows you to book ad campaigns targeted based on audience segments. And we will then introduce new performance workspaces in the DMP to have you look at and filter and drill down on specific event types and campaigns for all of the campaigns running in Seasons Advertising. And we're joining these together with the analytics events, so you can kind of filter both on ad data and traditional analytics data in that same dashboard. You also heard that we are working on a brand new ad server. So at the moment we have 2. We want to have 1 going forward. So we're taking the best features from each of these ad servers and combining them into a new project. And we're adding a lot of new features for programmatic and automated guaranteed. We're doing a new revision of inventory management and forecasting, investing in new user interfaces and workflows. So that's managed by Klaus and Mark, and we're really looking forward to launch this ad server in a demo version later this year, and then a public release in early 2016. And I have some cunning plans on how to use this ad server, not only for advertising, but also for maybe building some new workflows for more like multi-channel marketing, where we can leverage the ad server more as a repository for creatives that can be used in different workflows. So we'll see how that ends up as well. Then we are working together with other third-party ad servers. Some of our customers who are buying a DMP are not really ready to replace their own ad servers. We're working with Google, OpenAdStream. We have some regional partners in different places of the world. The idea here is to export the audience segments into the ad server to allow the ad server to book targeted campaigns, and then to the extent possible being able to capture that performance back into the DMP so you can optimize and tune these segments. For us to be able to do that effectively, we need ad servers who can provide us with a raw impression and clickstream logs and data about the advertiser, campaigns, and so on. And there are some ad servers that are good at that, and others who are only delivering aggregated data, which we cannot really use. So it's kind of a best effort depending on the ad server. For instance, with Google DFP Small Business, it's almost impossible to do that type of integration, but the premium version supports raw click logs. Another area that we are investing in our roadmap is integration towards sell-side platforms. And traditionally, a lot of our customers they obviously want to sell as much of the advertising space on their sites themselves. But there are a number of market trends that leads them to also doing more and more investments on the SSP side. One motivation could be more a workflow optimization. So it's not very practical to pick up the phone, to send emails, to book all of these things into the publisher ad server. Sometimes these, the buyers, the media agencies, the advertisers, they want things to be more efficient, booking the campaign in their own, possibly DSP or trading system. And they have a goal to do more and more programmatic buying of advertising. And if the publishers don't support that, they're kind of lagging behind the other publishers. And for the publishers, it's also about, you want to support these new workflows, but you still want to be in control over data. You don't want to give your data away to the external partners. So I guess one scenario for using or automating the workflow is using deal IDs. So this would be more like a predefined agreement where you say, for this advertiser, for this media agency, we set up kind of a contract and say you can buy this number of impressions for a certain price. And you do that by booking a campaign in your system referring to this particular deal ID. And some examples of how we've done this in the past is using deal IDs based on segments from the DMP. So when a user comes in, we have the user ID. We look up the segment IDs that the user belongs to, and this goes over to the SSP. And sometimes you just use the segments as deal IDs directly, or it could be more complex where you create some rules and mappings and generating multiple deal IDs for each segment. So what happens then is that a request goes out, a bid request containing deal IDs. And these requests, they go out across your company boundary over here, out to multiple demand-side platforms. So on this side, there are advertisers, media agencies, they're booking their campaign. They've already know which deal IDs they can use for a particular publisher. And they book the campaigns, they can place bids, and the bids go back to the SSP, and a winning bid is chosen, and you show this particular ad. Another common scenario is the ability to synchronize user IDs between our DMP and the SSP. So from a technical point of view, the only thing you're doing is creating user mapping tables, saying that the seasons ID, this one, is equal to the SSP ID, which is here. And these mapping tables, they could reside in the DSP, they could reside here over in the DMP or in both places, depending on the implementation. But the whole purpose here is if you do this user synchronization, when that bid request over here goes out to the DSPs, you have information about the ID of the user in such a way that the buyers on this side can have the ability to buy ads based on their own data. So if you send out a anonymous impression to generic ad exchanges or DSPs, people are not willing to pay for it that much. You're not going to get a lot of money for it unless there is a deal ID behind it. If the buyer knows the user, it might be just plain retargeting. They've been to a site. These DSPs also collect their own data about the user. They might be willing to raise their bid and bid more for this user, which also is an advantage for the publisher, which could then generate more income from these views. The fact that you synchronize users also allows you to do a server-to-server push of data from the DMP and over into the SSP. So for instance, for this user, these are the segment IDs they belong to. This is the age, this is the gender. And this provides even more flexibility in the SSP to create different types of deal IDs based on this data. The data is in the SSP, controlled by the publisher, so you're not giving away any data through this data push. So you decide how you expose all of this information as deal IDs externally. Then we also have customers who are interested in acquiring their own demand-side platforms. And on our side, on our roadmap, we're looking at doing more direct integration with selected demand-side platforms. In the Nordics, Adform is very popular. More globally, Google DoubleClick Big Manager is a big player. So the purpose of having a demand-side platform as a company, is being able to reach your users outside your own sites. So if you do the same type of user synchronization that we've done for the SSPs, and consider a scenario, for instance, if you are an insurance company, as a user, I wouldn't go very often to my insurance company. Maybe I'll look at my contract. I could do it maybe every 6 months or every year or something. But once I've logged in there, the insurance company could make that mapping. They could know me as a user, and they could actually buy access to me every day on all of the other sites that I'm traveling around. So one example here, then, using the DSP to buy access to particular users based on your own data across the different sites networks across the world. In particular, I mean, if you're doing commerce, you certainly want to do this because you want to do retargeting on other sites than your own. In a controlled way, based on your own data, then people come back and actually purchase the stuff that you retarget for. You stop the retargeting, so you're not getting these hotel ads even 3 weeks after you have completed the trip. So really being able to control the data, access the users on your sites and also on external sites. Are we down to 5 minutes? 5 minutes, that's good. Okay, so we're going to step back. This is kind of the big zoom out, looking at the different components. So we've talked about a lot of different scenarios of how to leverage this huge DMP over here. Through personalization over here, through email marketing, using our display ad server, using the display ad server for promotions on commerce sites, using a performance-based ad server, using third-party ad servers, being able to do deal IDs and programmatic trading out to external DSPs, and also buying access to your users on external site networks. So a lot of interesting scenarios. Some analysts I've talked to think that people can get scared of seeing all of this. Of course, you wouldn't start doing everything at once, but it's really some rich opportunities for growing into becoming a full-fledged partner leveraging this data across multiple channels. Final note about our search product as well. So you have a search product. It can be used for site search scenarios. It can be used for commerce scenarios. We've done a revision of our whole deployment architecture. There are new APIs coming out now in June, July for the search product. And search is being more and more closely integrated into our core engine. We're going to introduce new reporting interfaces that really joins it together with the analytics data. And as we are getting more and more commerce customers, the importance of our search products is going to increase, and we're doing more investments to make sure that this ties well in with all of our other products. So with that, thank you for listening to this long tour of the platform.